Her name is Ruth. She lives in a dilapidated mobile home about 15 minutes drive from the center of Magnolia, Mississippi. On cold winter days, the kitchen corner of her trailer freezes because the old heating system doesn't work properly. Ruth rubs her hands together, shivering, looking out at the freezing weather. Every morning, she makes a weak cup of coffee and silently watches the dark, thick stains on her hands. She used to do many jobs, cleaning floors, washing dishes, and packing hamburgers for a 24-hour diner. But now her legs ache from arthritis, making it difficult for her to stand for long periods. Ruth lives alone. Her only daughter moved to Florida after marrying a white man, and she rarely calls. Ruth doesn't hold a grudge. She's used to being left behind. Her father left when Ruth was just 3 years old, and her mother died from tuberculosis before she finished high school. Ruth's life has been like a series of shallow ruts on a highway, fragmented, quiet, and solitary, but she doesn't regret it. The only thing that keeps her going is faith, belief that one day we will be seen for what is inside us, not what is on the outside. It was a Monday morning. Ruth woke up at 4 a.m., put on her old worn-out coat, wrapped a thin scarf around her neck, and quietly left the mobile home. She had to go to the Magnolia Town Center, where a newly opened food packaging plant was hiring. Without a car, Ruth had to walk more than 3 miles to the highway, where truck drivers occasionally stopped for rest. She stood by a gas station along the road, signaling for a ride when a large gray truck slowed down. She walked to the truck's door. Could you give me a lift for a few miles? I don't have transportation. I'll sit quietly in the back of the truck. No trouble. The driver was a white man, about 40, with a scruffy beard. He looked Ruth up and down and then smirked. I don't give rides to strangers, especially people like you. Ruth was stunned. Before she could speak, he slammed the door shut, revved the engine, and drove off, leaving a cloud of dust on her coat. A 6-year-old girl stood by the gas station, eyes wide in disbelief, watching the scene. Ruth bent down, smiled at the girl, and said as if reassuring herself, "It's okay, it's all right." But deep inside her, something broke. That day, Ruth didn't get the job. The factory had enough workers. She trudged back to the dirt road, the wind biting through her scarf. The mocking laugh of the driver echoed in her head, and it wasn't just a rejection, it was a scar. 2 days later, the weather was still freezing. Ruth went into a small diner by the road, where she had heard the apple pie was the best in the area. She only ordered a cup of hot tea and sat near the window, warming herself while resting. A man wearing a dark coat, tall and sturdy, sat at the table opposite her. He ordered black coffee and a slice of apple pie. When the server brought the pie, he looked across the table at Ruth and smiled faintly. The weather is harsh today." Ruth nodded, but not saying anything. She wasn't used to talking to strangers. But he continued. "Would you like to try a piece of pie? I ordered too much." She was about to decline, but the cold and hunger made her hesitate. But after a few seconds, she quietly said, "Thank you." They started talking. He introduced himself as Walter, here on business for a few days, often stopping in small towns because people here are more real, more down to earth. Ruth briefly talked about herself, not complaining, just speaking in the voice of someone used to loss. Walter didn't ask many questions, but his eyes showed genuine concern. When he stood up to leave, Walter placed a business card on Ruth's table. "If you need a job or just someone to listen, don't hesitate." Ruth looked at the card. The text read clearly, "Walter Jameson, CEO of WJ Logistics and Freight." Ruth was stunned. That was one of the largest freight companies in the region, and the same company whose truck had rejected her a few days ago. Ruth held the business card in her hand throughout the night. She didn't call immediately. In her mind, she still heard the mocking laughter of the driver, the same uniform of the company. She was afraid that if she was rejected again, her heart wouldn't be able to heal. But then 3 days later, on a misty morning, when her hands could no longer withstand the cold, Ruth picked up the phone. "This is Ruth. We met at the little diner in Magnolia last week." Walter immediately recognized her voice, and he wasn't surprised, and didn't ask too many questions. He simply said softly, "I'm glad you called." A few days later, Ruth was invited to the local office of the company. So she wore her most modest dress, took 2 buses, and walked half a mile to get there. Her heart raced as she passed through the large glass doors. She was greeted by a woman of the same age as Ruth, a black administrative supervisor. She greeted Ruth with a warm smile. "Walter asked me to wait for you. We have some light logistics positions available, so no physical requirements. If you're interested, we can start next week." Ruth almost couldn't believe her ears. She nodded repeatedly, her throat tight. A door, after years of being shut, had finally opened. On her first day at work, Ruth felt both excited and nervous. The company was huge, filled with bright lights and computers. She couldn't help but feel like an outsider among the young, energetic colleagues. She walked into the office and was assigned to organizing orders and checking paperwork. Everything was new to her, but the stares from others, those suspicious, doubtful glances, could not be hidden. Some colleagues avoided her, while others looked at her with cold eyes, as if she didn't belong there. Despite that, Ruth didn't let it shake her. She continued to work hard, not letting herself falter. Walter occasionally came by, checked in, and praised her progress. She didn't want to get too confident, but Ruth knew she was changing. Each day that passed, she felt more solid, though the feelings of insecurity still lingered. She knew things would be okay. A week later, Ruth received praise from her supervisors and was invited to join a new project, an opportunity to showcase her leadership and life experience. The door that opened was not only a step forward in her career, but also a journey to rediscover her faith in herself. Though life was still full of challenges, she knew she deserved better things. As Ruth continued to settle into her new role, the challenges kept coming. At first, it seemed like the storm of skepticism had passed, but soon enough, that she realized that not everyone in the company was ready to accept her. The whispers behind her back grew louder, some colleagues seemed to be doing everything they could to undermine her, questioning her ability and even spreading rumors about her. It wasn't just the new task she had to handle, it was the emotional toll of feeling like an outsider. But Ruth, ever resilient, pressed on. She had been through worse, and she wasn't about to let some people's judgment stop her now. The first test came when her supervisor asked her to take charge of a project, a major logistics operation involving a shipment that could bring in significant profits for the company. It was an enormous responsibility, and Ruth knew that if she succeeded, she would silence the doubts once and for all. However, as the project began, things quickly spiraled. One of the major trucks had an accident, causing a delay in the delivery. Ruth immediately took charge, organizing the team to come up with a solution. But there were whispers of doubt, with some colleagues openly criticizing her leadership. Demkia, Walter, the CEO, had been watching closely. He had seen Ruth's potential long before others did. Now, he knew it was time for her to prove herself. Don't worry about them, like Walter said during one of their conversations. The real challenge is not in what they say, but in how you respond to it. Let your actions speak louder than their words. Ruth took those words to heart, but she refused to let the negativity shake her. The next morning, she was at the site bright and early, working alongside her team to fix the issue. She personally oversaw every detail, ensuring the shipment would make it to the client on time. The day before the deadline, the shipment was completed and delivered. The client was happy, and Ruth had earned the respect of the entire team. When Ruth returned to the office, she found Walter waiting for her. He gave her a nod of approval and a quiet smile. "You did it, Ruth. You've earned your place here." Ruth had made it through many obstacles in her journey so far, but the real test was just beginning. As much as she had earned respect for her hard work, there was still one challenge she hadn't fully faced yet. Proving to herself that she truly belonged in the world of executives and business leaders. One afternoon, Walter called Ruth into his office, a calm expression on his face. The news he was about to deliver would set Ruth's life on a new path entirely. "Ruth, we've had some major restructuring in the company," said Walter began. As Ruth sat across from him, "We've been watching your progress, and I believe you're ready for a bigger role. I'd like to offer you the position of logistics manager." Ruth stared at him, surprised, yet her heart raced with anticipation. She had been working toward this moment for years, but with the position came greater responsibility. Would she be able to balance her role, handle the new demands, and continue to overcome her insecurities? The thought weighed heavily on her. I'm honored, Walter, but I'm not sure if I'm ready for such a big step," Ruth admitted, her voice wavering slightly. Walter leaned forward, his tone firm but encouraging. "You've already proved yourself, Ruth. You've dealt with everything they've thrown at you, and you've come out on top. Now it's time for you to lead. This position is not just about managing logistics. It's about leading people, inspiring them, and showing them that anyone, no matter where they come from, can succeed if they work hard enough." Ruth took a deep breath. That she had worked hard to get this far, and the idea of leading a team was both exhilarating and terrifying. But she knew that this opportunity could change everything for her, not just for her career, but for her sense of self-worth. She couldn't let fear hold her back. "I accept," Ruth said finally, a sense of pride swelling within her chest. The first few weeks as logistics manager were overwhelming. Ruth had to adjust to new responsibilities, coordinating shipments, managing a larger team, and dealing with higher stakes. But every challenge she faced, she tackled with the determination that had gotten her this far. One particular challenge came when one of her team members, a young man named James, doubted her leadership. He was an ambitious and outspoken employee, and he didn't take kindly to Ruth's sudden promotion. During a team meeting, he openly questioned her decisions in front of everyone. "You're new to this. Ruth, do you really think you're qualified to handle this department?" James sneered, his voice cutting through the tension in the room. "Dakia." For a moment, Ruth froze. She had expected resistance, but hearing it so directly in front of her team stung. Her first instinct was to react defensively, but she took a deep breath, remembering Walter's words. This was her chance to show everyone that she belonged here, that she had earned her place. Calmly, Ruth met James's gaze. "I understand your concerns, James," she said, her voice steady, "but let me remind you that leadership isn't about qualifications on paper. It's about experience, trust, and determination. I've fought for everything I have, and I'm here to make sure this team succeeds." The room fell silent. Ruth had spoken with authority, and her words resonated. James didn't respond immediately, but his expression softened, and Ruth could tell she had planted a seed of respect. The next few weeks were tough, but Ruth began to win over more of her team. She worked side by side with them, learning their strengths and weaknesses, and offering guidance where needed. Slowly, she earned their trust and respect, proving that her promotion wasn't a mistake. Months later, Ruth found herself standing in front of the company's board of directors, presenting the success of the new logistics system she had implemented. The data was impressive, on-time deliveries were up, costs were down, and client satisfaction had skyrocketed. Ruth had not only fulfilled her duties as logistics manager, but she had exceeded expectations. As the presentation ended, there was a round of applause. Walter stood up, a proud smile on his face. "Ruth," he said, his voice carrying across the room, "you've done more than just manage logistics. You've led a transformation. The company's better because of you. And you've proven that no matter where you start, you can rise to the top with hard work and dedication." Ruth felt a lump in her throat. The journey had been long, but every challenge had shaped her into the woman she was today. She had fought against prejudice and self-doubt and skepticism, but she had emerged stronger. She had earned her place, not just in the company, but in her own heart. A year later, Ruth stood at the front of the company's annual meeting, delivering a speech about leadership, perseverance, and the power of believing in yourself. She had come full circle, from the woman who was rejected by a truck driver to the respected leader of a successful department. "I want to remind you all of one thing," Ruth said, her voice strong. "No matter where you come from or how many times you're told no, you have the power to change your life, and never let anyone define your worth. You are the one who decides what you can achieve." The room was silent for a moment, and then the applause erupted. Ruth smiled, tears welling in her eyes. She had not only changed her life, she had inspired others to believe in themselves too. The road ahead was still full of challenges, but for the first time in her life, Ruth knew she could face anything. She had earned her place, and she was ready for whatever came next.